Hi guys, it's me, Cary. I'm the guy who created this Abacaba channel, and I'm the one who's uploading all these data visualization videos to that channel. And in this video, I wanted to give a brief history as to why this channel was created and why I have this seeming fascination with baby name trend data in the first place. Also, this is going to be a super sloppy, unscripted video, which is why it's on my lazy channel. And also, I'll probably ask questions along the way about what you, the viewers, think. So if you have any opinions, let me know in the comments. Anyway, let's just go chronologically through time. So the first relevant thing to know is that in 2011, right after I graduated middle school, I was introduced to this thing called processing, which is like the sketchbook that lets you code in Java, and you can create cool graphics, 2D and 3D visualizations like this map generator, which I really loved. And basically, I really started to enjoy coding and making kind of pretty visual things on the screen. Next year, in 2012, the official YouTube channel uploaded this video that shows the top searches on the YouTube platform day by day as a data visualization. And of course, this was back in 2012, so Gangnam Style was extremely popular. But when I saw this video, I loved the idea of seeing trends in the form of bubbles changing sizes because it's very intuitive. You don't need to understand any numbers going on. You can just see it and instantly know what's going on. Fast forward 2 years, now it's 2014. I just finished my junior year of high school, and I don't really know why I was motivated to do it, but I had a lot more free time since it was summer break. So I decided to look for data sets that I could use to make my own version of this sort of visualization. And I was like, what's some type of information that grows and shrinks over time that kind of reflects cultural trends like this one? And I'm like, oh, baby names. So if you go to Social Security's website by searching SSA names or something, you can see that there's a place to download the database. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but if you click around, you can find it somewhere. And basically, I was blown away by how complete the database is. What I mean is they give you all the names that appeared at least 5 times throughout the country every single year from 1880 to 2019. And there's no holes in the data, there's no irregularities. And because it's a government agency, it's showing data across the entire population, not just a sample. So you know that the database is complete. It's not an approximation, it is the ground truth. And you rarely get databases that complete. There's also this website called behindthename.com where you can sort of search any name you want. Let's just go with Karen because that's a meme name now. And it'll like show you graphs for every country. And to me, just the fact that there was so much data, it was just really fun to explore. Like, why did certain names spike at different times or fall at certain times? So, going into my senior year of high school, 2014 to 15, I coded this bubble visualization where, again, the size of the bubble reflects how popular that thing is. But obviously, in this instance, the bubbles repel from each other so they never overlap. And also, I'm like showing every possible name, not just the top ones here. So there's a few differences, but you know, it's high school, so I also have a lot of classwork and homework, and my brother Michael also has a lot of classwork and homework, and also applying to colleges and all that. So the point is, we don't have all the free time in the world, but over the course of 9 months, from about July 2014 to March 2015, on and off, I'm coding this thing, I'm experimenting with different physics of attraction and repulsion to make it work. And I'm also doing research, it's more like just Googling and Wikipediaing, about certain historical events. Wait, let me make my face cam smaller. They show up in the upper right of this video for certain events that affect the trends. So you can see in 1936, I wrote that the film Woman in Red, featuring horse rider Shelby Barrett, premieres in February 1935. So I'm guessing that means that if we were to look at the name Shelby, which is in this S region here, so all the purple bubbles. There it is, it pops out of nowhere right there. I don't know if you can see my mouse. But basically, I spent 9 months scouring the internet for all signs for why names are going up and down. And Michael is also working hard on making this cool 3D effect at the end to really make it look professional. And I guess how I felt is I put way more effort into this video than I should have, because it was only one video and we uploaded it to a brand new channel. So let me just give context for why this channel exists. In early 2014, as some of you may know, all of our YouTube channels got completely demonetized for illegitimate reasons, and later we were reinstated because it was just, there's no point to it. And so we were making no money on videos that were like pulling in tens of millions of views. Whatever, right? But then we realized that if we create a new channel, like with absolutely no connections to the old ones, we could still monetize them. And it gave us another reason to try again. Also because, you know, we were going into college and like starting to become adults. So it's like, we got to start focusing on where our career is headed and all that. So that was one reason why I created this channel. And I didn't, like, otherwise I would have probably just uploaded this video to my Cary KH channel, which is supposed to be where all my personal projects are. Since, you know, some of these videos are like Minecraft, some of them are AI. It's kind of diverse. The only reason that this exists on a different channel is because of the AdSense ban for 2.5 years. Okay, that's 2014. After kind of 9 months of building up suspense, we finally finished enough work to get the video done and upload it on the most important Pi Day ever, because it's 31415. I still think that's a cool achievement. And it kind of goes viral. I remember in the first week it got about 400,000 views, which I know it's a lot for a first video of a channel that has no other backing. So I'm not complaining that it flopped or anything, because it did not flop. But I guess what I felt was that, you know, I spent so much time on like researching history in the corner here. And let's be honest, even if a billion people watch this video, so few people are actually reading what's going on in the corner, and it's flashing by so quickly that no one is going to even remember that, oh, Hattie W. Caraway is the first woman to be elected to the US Senate, or that Joe is the first two-letter name to reach the top 100. Like, they're focused on the main portion of the screen, the bubbles, and they're probably even skipping ahead to see like when they were born. So basically what I felt like is I had discovered or stumbled upon all these fascinating historical trends, but none of them I really got to share with the audience in a way that they would actually learn it. And I guess what I felt like is over the last 5 years since this video has come out, I have sort of become interested every time Social Security as an administration releases the newest data of baby names, which is around May of the next year. That's around when they're done processing all the data. Like, it's sort of a big traditional event for me in early May to see, oh, has Social Security released their data? I want to see who's first, who rose the fastest, who fell the fastest, who are the underdogs, who's, you know, what's changing in the baby name world. And what I think is interesting is no one else seems to really have this fascination. And the only other people who do are, I mean, I don't want to generalize too much, but it's expectant mothers, right? People who would go to nameberry.com and try to figure out what do I want to name my baby. Well, not just mothers, expectant parents in general. But like if I go to these websites where they are discussing the newest like database dump, like the comments are all like people who are about to have a baby because those people are the most interested. And like that's totally reasonable, totally expected. But I do feel like when I talk about this stuff, you know, people will be confused as to why I made this video, and then they'll think, well, maybe Cary's having a kid of his own, otherwise why would he care about this? And some people would be like, oh my gosh, who's the mother? Or like, is she pregnant? Or like, it just feels like there's no evidence of that. I'm not having a baby, I never have, and that's completely unrelated. And I guess how I feel is that I'm just kind of surprised that there aren't more people interested in this database, just given how much history and cultural trends are hidden within it. And I wanted to give more light to that somehow. So, okay, let me just make a few analogies at this point. I'm sure many of you guys know about the channel's Wendover Productions. Let me just like show you, you know, it's sort of informational, educational videos about you know, I guess history, politics, geography, that kind of realm of the world. And there's also RealLifeLore, who does a similar thing. And then a third one I'm thinking in this category is real engineering. And the reason I'm bringing them up is because they're all very successful channels, and they do kind of cover a broad range of topics, but I noticed that a lot of them are about airplanes. And I think that's really cool because, I personally am not that interested in airplanes, but I bet Wendover Productions, RealLifeLore, and Real Engineering saw that there were interesting stories to be told in the world of airplanes, made videos about that in a way that engaged the audience, and made a lot of people who thought the topic was boring, it made them interested in it. So I was thinking, it feels like in this day and age, no one really cares about baby name trends, but in a similar way to how Wendover got a lot of the world interested in airplanes, well, that's kind of an overstatement, but you know what I mean. I could do the same with baby names, but I just haven't done it yet. So the reason I mention all of this is because by 2018, it sort of occurred to me, like the 2017 dump had just come out in May of 2018. And it occurred to me that this video really does not do does not do the baby name world justice. Like, I felt like there was just so much more I could give to make it interesting. I guess like some examples I could show you are, I have this open in Adobe Animate right now, but I should tell you, like, what are some things that I find interesting? Well, one of them is that the United States seems to only be interested in one girl's name as a month at a time. So, in 1880, people were named May, and then for some reason in the 1920s, they switched to June, and I'm not really sure why. And then it was Julie, which I guess is a form of July, and then it became April. And the craziest thing about all of this is that no one was coordinating all of this. There's like millions of people across the whole country, and they are subconsciously all thinking to themselves that, like, wow, a baby named June would sound very beautiful, and I'm going to give it, but I'm not really sure why I don't like the name May anymore, but I like the name June. That was 80 years ago, but it's happening again now if you look in the corner. Or I guess a more historically relevant name would be Christine, which I mentioned in one of my videos, how in 1952, the first transgender woman in America, I think, got publicity for having a gender reassignment surgery. And in the 1950s, the world was pretty transphobic, I think. They weren't quite ready for that concept. So I know causation does not imply correlation, or other way around, correlation does not imply causation, but I mean, I can't really think of any other reason why the name would drop by 50% in just 2 years. So I think this is a sign of the kind of repulsion of transgender people back in that time period. So you can see like cultural shifts in that way. Or, the rise of like swapping out the ending phoneme of a name from IE in names like Maddie. See, that just fell off really quickly, and replacing it with a Y, or no, that's not a good example. I can't think of a good example. Like now names end with EY more often, like Ashley, or even like Ashley EIGH or something. I can't think of them all on the spot, but basically I felt like you could turn each of these into their own little video kind of discussing why things are rising and falling, and I just hadn't done it right in that 2015 video. So in 2018, I coded this thing again in processing that would, instead of going through history once and showing all the bubbles on the screen at once, I wanted to pinpoint the viewer's attention to one name at a time. So you can only see the name Helen on the screen right now. You can't see everyone else. And my thought was I would give sort of a 1 or 2 sentence fun fact about each name before moving on to the next one, so that I could say something cool about it. Like, okay, here's Evelyn. So Okay, I don't want to go through everything again, but this little spike that happens in the early 1900s is probably because there's this choir girl or chorus girl in the 1900s who is a teenager, and as is common in the time, a bunch of older men who are a little predatory, try to get with her, and she ends up marrying one of them, and then like one of her suitors ends up shooting the other person, killing them, and then there's this huge trial. Everyone involved is super famous and rich, so it goes into the newspapers, and it's called the Trial of the Century. So it seems reasonable to think that the name Evelyn Nesbit was at the top of newspapers all across the country. Probably at the detriment of her mental health, but that's how history goes. And then the name kind of went up and continued to rise to 1919. It fell because that just sort of naturally happens to all names. And then by the 1960s, I'm sure expectant parents were when they hear the name Evelyn, they think of middle-aged 40 to 50-year-old women from before the Great Depression, and like that's those are old people. Those are people who make me think of my parents. I don't want to associate my child with them. And of course, by around the 2000s, we're far enough in time where all these old Evelyns from the 1920s had died off. So it comes back again and it entered the top 10. And like when I saw the database release in 2017 where Evelyn was in the top 10 for the first time in over 100 years, to me that was really exciting, and I can't really explain why. Like it almost feels like when people are really interested in sports and football and I'm not, and I try to ask them like, why do you care so much about people who aren't you and don't benefit you in any way? Why are you excited when they move a ball past an arbitrary line? But they are, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's good for them that they found something they're fascinated in. I kind of feel like that had sort of happened in May of 2018. So I made this visualization in May of 2018, and then I wrote a Google Doc of sort of factoids. I'm not going to show it because I don't want to show my private files right now. But basically there's 150 names that kind of qualified for this list, and I decided to write like a paragraph for each one. It ended up being like a 25-page script with over 10,000 words, and I realized like this is just way too much. Like I spent weeks writing this. It'll end up being like 2 hours long. Who cares about baby names that much? I think that's overkill. And at the time, I also felt like viewers aren't going to be interested in this. So it would be throwing away a ton of my time to record it, edit it, put in all the fancy images and all that. And so I sort of like got burnt out essentially. And as soon as the school year started in 2018, this is my junior year of college now, I just kind of put the project aside. And then in early 2020, I decided to start it up again because I was uploading to the Abacaba channel a lot more frequently in early 2020. And I'm like, this is a good addition to this other group of lots of other videos we're uploading at the time. But the annoying thing about this kind of data is that every year that goes by that you don't upload the video, it becomes a year out of date. So in 2020, I was like, I have to re-render, relist, and re-script this whole video to include the 2019 data as well. So, some of this information, like the median year that Angelas were born in, all of that stuff is going to shift a little bit forward in time when you include these 2019 born babies. So it sort of felt like at this point, if I'm going to commit to making this video, I should just do it in one, mad dash, get it uploaded while it's still up to date, and then move on, right? Because every time I sort of put it on the shelf and come back to it later, I have to rewrite it. I have to fix all these inconsistencies now. I have to re-render it, and it's like a lot of extra work. But then in early 2020, coronavirus happened, and I ended up making a ton of coronavirus videos instead. And once again, this project got put on hold. So, like this was, when I was working on this was February 2020. Wait, actually, let me see if I can show you. Oh, is it okay if I show you that? Oh, shoot, that showed up. Honestly, yeah, that's fine. There's nothing in the screen that's like incriminating. What I wanted to show you was Yeah, like the confusing thing is that I also switched computers in that time. So all my files are starting to be spread across so many different locations. So like a lot of the files for this exact video are on 3 different hard drives that are backed up on different dates. And what? And that adds to the confusion, where I just thought if I did this all in one rapid mad dash, I wouldn't have this problem. All my files should technically be in the right place. So okay, the thing that I'm trying to show you here is there's this folder called baby name reformatter, which is a processing script that takes in the data that Social Security releases, and I guess does processing and formatting to it so that it can be read into the code that draws this. You know, like it figures out the median age, it figures out all of these stats. But you can see that like I did all these iterations of it. I have this this iteration from 2020 January 31st, 2020 March, 2020 October, 2020 November, 2020 December. These older ones from September 2018, January 2020, June 2018. Basically, it just felt like, you know, I just need to get it done. So in December 2020, I was starting to realize I have this rendered video, and take a look at this. If you're at the end of 2020 and you say that, you know, someone was born in 1975 like Angela is here, then that would make her 45 years old right now. But if I release this video in 2021, well, the vast majority of people born in 1975 will still be 45 because we haven't reached their birthday in 2021 yet. But it would still seem like it's already out of date, because it's just nice to upload it in 2020 and know that 1975 plus 45 equals 2020. So I knew that if I took so long on this iteration of the video that I uploaded it on 2021, I would have to re-render the video all over again and go through all the like cycles of fixing the script again. So I told myself, no matter what happens, I just need to get it out. And like at this point, that 25-page script, I don't even care anymore. Like I'm so tired and exhausted by this point that like all I really want is for this video to be out there, and the commentary doesn't even matter. And so I know there's other people in the bar graph data visualization YouTube world who could just maybe see it and maybe they'd be inspired enough to make their own versions. And I guess how I feel is, you know, in the way that Real Engineering and those channels perhaps made the story of airplanes really interesting to people, and that's using techniques like really good video editing, really good storytelling, I guess fancy graphics. I'm too exhausted to do that myself. I feel like I've put in so much energy and I just don't really have much else to give. So I feel like maybe there's someone else in the world out there who can sort of see all the cool stuff there is to show in this data and make a cool documentary out of it. Like I just feel like there's so many stories to be told. Now here's the thing, like a lot of my friends I've asked in real life, they don't care about this, and I feel like when I try to tell them like I'm working on that baby name video again, they're like, why are you doing that? This just isn't relevant to me. It's not relevant to you. You're not going to get a lot of views. Why are you still so obsessed? And I can't really answer that, but there's sort of a sunk cost fallacy, right? Where like I can show you this whole list again. It's like, why, if I put this much work into rendering so many renditions of the data, I gotta just put something out there, even if it's like the worst possible quality. So actually when I started editing this video together in Premiere, that was like just a week ago. It was already like December 28th, and I told myself like, I don't think I'm even gonna put commentary on it. I'll just put music in the background and upload the whole thing without any sort of human commentary or interaction. Because a lot of my Abacaba videos are like that, and that's fine. But then I told myself, like, if I don't script it, and I just sort of like talk what's on my mind each second that goes by in the video, that doesn't really take that much extra effort, and it gives the people who really care about this stuff a little bit more of a pointer of where to look. But I told myself I'm not going to do any actual visual editing or like, I'm not going to superimpose any images of historical events or, stuff like that, because it's a slippery slope. As soon as I start editing stuff like that, it's going to start bogging down. I'm going to try to include an image for every name, and then I won't get it out by the end of 2020. So because of that, in this video, you can sort of hear me talking really, really fast sometimes, because I'm trying to fit in my thoughts on a certain name before the animation switches to the next name. And, since I told myself I cannot edit the video visuals itself, it's going to be 12 minutes regardless of what I say. It's just like very limiting. If I wanted to pause on a name and discuss it in further detail, that would be good for like a video sort of like of this style, like Real Engineering or Wendover Productions, because like those are kind of fine-tuned to show you what we're talking about and be as captivating and easy to understand as possible. But I was under a different thought process here. I just wanted to sort of like dump the trash so that I could go into 2021 without this weight on my shoulders anymore. So I guess those are my thoughts. I wanted to also just correct a few mistakes that I made. Like these are super minor, but when I showed the name Lorraine, I'm not sure exactly where in the video that is. I claimed that Alsace-Lorraine was a region in France, in the southeastern corner of France, but it's really in the northeastern corner of France. And I got that wrong because the way that France and Germany border each other, I guess I could pull it up. It's diagonal. So this is really not that relevant, but you can see it's like I correctly identified that it was in the southwestern corner of Germany. So I figured if it's southwestern Germany, that means it's southeastern France, but it's northeastern France because they're diagonal. Okay, that doesn't really matter. Also, I said something wrong somewhere here. I said for the name Brittany that there was a 6-year interquartile range. So if you guessed her age to be 31, you'd only be off by 3 years on average. But it's actually 29. So, okay, yeah, this is really like pulling at strings now. But if the interquartile range goes from 1988 to 1994, that means the midpoint is 1991. And if you guess 1991, that means she's 29 years old, not 31. So it has to do with the distribution not being exactly symmetrical. So the mode or the peak of the graph is in 1989, but the midpoint of the interquartile range is really 1991. So, okay, that only I would care about that stuff. See, that's the kind of stuff that like maybe I might have accidentally put in the little history bubble over here that no one else really cares about. So yeah, that's, I just wanted to like put that out there. And I think like, I just don't really know where to go from here, because part of me just feels like, if the friends I talk to about this don't care about the subject, and now I've uploaded this kind of rushed together video about the subject, and now I also can stop thinking about it, I can rest, I can move on. Maybe everything should just move on. Like this should just be like a weird fever dream that happened. But I wanted to make this other comparison. I know this video is going on for a really long time now, but I was thinking to myself, why do I find this so interesting? And here's what I think. If you know linguistics, it's an academic field, but it's also a subject that a lot of people find very interesting. And there's this channel, Zidnaf, who I've been a fan of for like 5 years. And, they talk about linguistical trends in the United States. I think it's just sort of recreational exploration. Like there's a lot of other channels that do this. And there's also a lot of TikTok creators who talk about linguistics. And I know that linguistics is an academic field because it also has a lot of real world uses, like maybe helping people communicate with each other who aren't of the same language and all that. But I'm willing to bet that a lot of people study this linguistic stuff because it's honestly just really interesting and fascinating. And I was thinking, well, why is it that interesting? And I think it's because some of the things that are mentioned in these videos, such as the fact that verbs in English often have the accent on the second syllable, whereas nouns have it on the first. So I'm talking about like you produce produce, or you can address someone who has a house address. And like you think to yourself, do I say that? And then you try it in your own mouth a little bit. Produce, produce, affect, affect, address, address. And you're like, whoa, that is true. I do it subconsciously. Like this is a sort of quirk of my own brain that I wasn't aware of. But now that you've told me about it, I notice it as part of me. And so I think linguistics videos that try to reveal that in yourself, like make people have realizations about how, yourself. And I think, I don't want to make generalizations about why other people are interested in linguistics, but I think that's a big factor. Another part of linguistics that's really interesting is stuff like the caught merger, where things are sort of changing over time. So, people in the United States used to always pronounce the words caught as in like I caught a ball, and caught as in go sleep on the cot on the floor. They used to pronounce those two vowels differently. I pronounce them the same. Oh, let me just skip this ad. Yeah, Zidnaf made a video about catching cots. I pronounce them the same. I think people who pronounce them differently would say I caught a ball, but I'm going to sleep on the cot. So that's what the difference should be. But, in the last few decades, more and more of the United States has merged the two vowels and says, I caught a ball, I sleep on a cot, including me. And not only that, more people on the western side of the United States merge the vowels. More people on the eastern coast keep them separate. And the younger generation are the ones who are more likely to have them merged. So there's all these sort of trends that are changing, and no one really knows why or people know why or how, but like no one is in control of it. It's sort of like happening without any authoritative figure saying, do that. It's like just kind of subconscious human nature. And it's also cool to think to yourself, like, I merge them, but I'll listen to my parents right now and they don't merge them. And that kind of effect of like seeing these worldwide trends across the US and seeing it in the real world, like here's an example of a map in that video, that is really fascinating. But also the fact that things are changing, because you tend to think of English as like a static language and you learn it when you're a kid and these are the formal rules set in place. But the fact that anything is kind of changing under our noses and, in 50 years, things will be very different, that's a fascinating concept. So the reason I bring up all that about linguistics is because I feel like a lot of these baby name trends are analogous. In the same way that things change subconsciously across millions of people's brains at once, like caught and caught into caught and caught, and no one is in control of it, the same way that, we think of Ashley in the 80s as this like brand spanking new name and it sounds super trendy, super cool, super kind of unisex, and then like subconsciously over the next 30 years we start to get tired of it somehow, and no one is telling us to stop using the name, but we do. That's similar. And also the same subconscious idea of like, I do this without thinking. I say I caught a ball, I sleep on a cot subconsciously. I don't even think about it. In the same way that if I were to tell you, hey, I got an email from Gertrude, like you instantly, without thinking, are imagining a grandmother or an old woman. It's like something in your brain instantly sets off old woman vibes. Like it doesn't require any math or memorization. It just happens. So in the same way, I feel like these sort of trends, you can make a video talking about it, and then the viewers would start to think of their own brains and realize, like, yeah, that is part of my brain function as well. And so I think, if the hypothesis is one of the reasons why people think linguistics is so interesting is because when they watch it, they discover something about how their own subconscious brain works. I think the same could be said about names. Another thing I want to mention is that I did this school project in 2014 with a classmate in my AP statistics class. And I did it on baby names because like you had to use some database and to calculate like means, standard deviations, and skew. And I thought this was a perfect database because you could sort of like search anything, and if you look at this graph, you could say, is it normal? Well, this one looks kind of normal, but some don't, and you could start to see like this one might be skewing slightly right. You know, like the tail on the right is slightly faster than the tail on the left. This is Debbie, by the way, short for Deborah, and it's a very flash in the pan, in and out name. But like other names are definitely not normal distributions. This is like trimodal for Catherine. Or, you know, names that come back are definitely not normal distributions. They're at least bimodal. So the reason I bring this up is because in AP statistics class, I did my project on baby names with this other person who honestly wasn't interested in it either. But like, you know, I'm the type of person who would always do most of the work in group projects, and not even at the laziness of other people. It was like because I wanted to. Like even if, you know, I would offer to do more than half of the work, which I don't know. That was like 6 years ago, so maybe things have changed. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is because the AP statistics teacher did give us an A on this, also because it was like an end of the year project, so like the teacher's gonna be nice. But he gave us an A, but then he also left this comment saying, like, not sure how this is relevant to the real world though, because that was one of the requirements on the rubric, like choose a database that's relevant to the real world. So like some people pick things like, you know, car seatbelt safety, or like medical problems with, you know, I don't know, organs. You know, you can kind of try to save someone's life by like discovering, you know, if their sort of maybe blood protein levels are out of whack and they're like 3 standard deviations higher. That stuff has real world applications. It's useful. And I guess this kind of analysis doesn't. And, you know, I was kind of aware of that. And I was trying to give an argument during the final group presentation that this stuff is relevant because your own given name is the way that you most closely identify yourself as you. And I don't think anything can get more intrinsic than your own name. So like when I think of me, like I am Cary, and Cary is me, and everyone else who shares my name Cary, I already feel like we have something in common. Like we both know that we have a name that sometimes gets confused with a girl's name. It's also very short. It also peaked in the 1960s when Cary Grant was a famous actor. So I guess people might think I'm like a 60-year-old man when they hear my name, but whatever. And so like, you know, if you want to name a new baby, I guess there's a lot of weight in picking what name is correct. Because like, let's say you name someone Gladys, you know, like there's nothing wrong with choosing a name that isn't in style right now. Like, in fact, picking a unique name might be better for some people because then you don't have to constantly include your last name. There's like pros and cons to everything. But I think there is something useful in, or like, you know, I don't know, there's just a lot of things that people will sort of instantly judge you on based on your name. I guess, you know, race also comes into this too, but I don't want to start in that discussion of like, that name sounds like that race, that name sounds like that race, because like, I'm not qualified to talk about that discussion. But it's undeniable that when you know, like receive an you receive a resume for a job application of someone, and all you know is the name, you already have a conception of what that person's like. And I think, you know, if there was sort of an academic field of analyzing these cultural trends up and down, which there isn't right now, it would sort of help paint a picture of like, why do people have these feelings? So like names right now, like I'm sure anyone watching right now is at least of age 10 years old, right? So you guys probably don't hang around many people named Luna, which is one of the fastest rising girls' names right now, and you probably weren't even aware. But, you know, the people coming out in the 2020s who will enter the job market in the 2040s, there'll be tons of Lunas. And I think that could be helpful to know because, you know, if you see a message from an anonymous Luna, like you have clues about like, you know, how old they probably are. Of course, like, you know, Lunas will come out in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. There just aren't very many of them. And then, okay, one more thing I want to mention. I guess I'll just I keep talking about this like on and on. I feel like, you know, during my sort of initial period of researching all these trend stories in 2014 and 15, I guess I sort of exposed myself to way more information than I needed to make this video. Like, honestly, if I didn't put anything in that history corner here, it would be just as enjoyable as a video to watch. But I think I kind of artificially infused a lot more information into my brain that, what's the phrase, like, in my real world experiences, when I come across like something on the news or something on a billboard sign that aligns with the information that I've learned from this whole experiment, it makes me go, whoa, that's super interesting. Like, I'm glad I knew that because now I'm connecting the dots in my brain. So like, here's an example. Well, let me think of an example. So like, okay, I'm trying to keep it vague, so I'm going to change the name up a bit. And thankfully I have a place where I can pick fake names. So we had a neighbor, like real life in physical space, our family's house. We had someone who lived across the street from us. And I didn't know them that well because we only ever like saw each other when we both happened to be, you know, heading out of the house at the same time. But sadly, you know, while we were living here, I learned that she passed away. And I didn't know much about her, but I knew her name. Let's say her name was Betty. It wasn't Betty, but, you know, protecting privacy and all that. I suddenly realized that her real life age, based on the fact that she died at like a very typical age for women to die at, almost perfectly aligned with the data set that I had known. Like, after kind of meticulously watching over this video again and again and again to make sure that everything was correct, I already knew that Betty peaked in the 1920s or 30s, somewhere around there. And I was like, whoa, like, that is super cool that something that seems theoretical, oh, this isn't Betty, something that seems theoretical and like part of just a silly online project with no real world applications matches up with something I experienced in the real world. Or like, every time I turn on the TV and listen to the newscasters talk and then they invite some guest on, like, and they say like, we're gonna invite Linda Johnson, like, I instantly know like, oh, that's probably someone around 60 to 70 years old. And like, maybe you could say, oh, even if you didn't do that whole project, you would still know that because of the same subconscious thing where like, I already know that someone named Linda is like between middle age and elderly. That's just the feeling. But I would say the specificity of what I knew because of this project was just so much more fine-tuned. Another example is especially like rising names right now, because people who are between 0 and 10 years old aren't in the news a lot, and they're not in my real life a lot because, you know, I don't have any young siblings. I'm not like near school, obviously, or elementary school, obviously. But it's like when I hear a family member has just had a baby and then I hear, oh, they named them Isabella. And then I look at the data, or I know the data, and I think like, that just makes a lot of sense. And now I'm not going to forget their name because I'm like, they were born in 2014. That like pretty closely aligns with, you know, what the graphs show. And they're not named Heather or anything. Like, no one's named Heather anymore. I just think that like, it's sort of something that you don't realize if you're unaware of it. But if you are aware of it, it pops up everywhere. Like, every day something pops up where it lines up with what I already know. There's a word for that term. It's like, no, there's a term for that phenomenon where like, you learn a new word that you've never heard of before, and then like, over the next few days it seems to pop up everywhere. And I remember like, let me just Google it. phrase for when something you, I don't know if Google's gonna understand this, you just learned shows up everywhere. Oh, wow, okay, Google got it. It's the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, is where something you recently learned suddenly appears everywhere. It's also an effect of frequency bias and illusion, which makes sense, because if you're not aware of it happening, you a black cat, not you, ooh, a black cat. If you're not aware of it happening, as far as you're concerned, it's not happening at all. But I would definitely say that this Baader-Meinhof phenomenon is exactly what's happening to me and this data. It's like, now that I've sort of been awoken to this world that I feel like very, very few people also know about, there's just so many fascinating things that just pop out of the woodworks. And I don't know. I feel like there's certain times when I feel like, oh, it's my obligation to sort of invite this to other people as well. I guess I've been using girls' names a lot. Like, I also have been doing this with boys' names. It's just that I did the girls' names project first because the trends for girls' names, for whatever reason, go in and out faster, so you can get more fine-tuned with your predictions or whatever. But like, I also think it's interesting that like the Aiden, Jaden, Caden, Braden fad for boys' names is already on the decline. And like, these are all people that are younger than me, right? Like, I was born in 97. There's almost no one named Aiden in my grade. I remember like the people in the grades below me, like a couple or 3 years below me in high school, were starting to be named Aiden. So there's like 1 or 2 in those grades. But the vast majority of them I will never be in school with. And it's interesting to know that like it's already on the decline. So this is sort of a cohort of people that is already sort of wrapping up. And I think that is interesting. Or like the fact that Jackson, the proportion of people named Jackson who spell it with an X, as in Jaxon, is increasing. So it used to be, you know, maybe like 10% of them back in 2000. But by 2019, maybe around 40%, 45% of people named Jackson will spell it with an X. Like, yeah, these are just, I'm just giving examples of boy name trends that are happening for whatever reason. And yeah, or also like another cool thing to analyze is, you know, sometimes celebrities cause boosts to names, of course, but you know, even the most popular person, Justin Bieber, did not have any effect on the name Justin by 2010 because as a name, it was already in such steep decline that it could not be saved. And people don't think of only Justin Bieber when they think of Justin. So there's like so many sort of general societal phenomenons that keep reoccurring where like a name in decline cannot be recovered by a famous celebrity, but a name that's starting to rise can be boosted by it. So like Charlotte is on the rise again, and Charlotte being born, like Princess Charlotte, born in 2015, like helps accelerate that. So it's like if you're losing, you'll keep losing, but if you're winning, celebrity babies will push it up even faster. Or another phenomenon is that boys' names tend to go more and more girl as years go on. Not all of them, but many of them, and never in the other direction. So like Ashley was a name that started out as being only for boys. You can see like the blue is the boys at the bottom. Not very common, but still unisex, male. And then in the 60s it turned female and then became the most popular girl's name by the 80s. And that also happened to Kelly, Courtney, Lauren. Madison is the most famous one. Lots of others. I don't have a list on me right now. Morgan, Austin, Kennedy, Jordan. And they all have happened in like, well, I feel like this is sort of a trend that's been happening the last half century, but obviously like a name like Kelly switched from boy to girl much earlier. Let's see, 1957 is when Kelly went from male to female. So that's 1957. Whereas more recently, a name like Jordan may have, it never switched fully to girl. Like Kennedy, maybe let me check. Kennedy is a name that also switched. I guess 1994. So I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is because it happens to a ton of names, but it didn't happen all at the same time. Like Kennedy switched genders 50 years after Kelly did. So it doesn't seem to be a cultural fad. Instead, it seems to be like a general trend that happens regardless of what generation we're in. I mean, like we could go into the specifics of why this happens, and that would probably involve people who study gender studies or something. But I think it has to do with this like idea that, you know, masculine names seem stronger. So if you give a girl a male name, it kind of makes them. I mean, okay, this has to do with a little bit of sexism and misogyny, I guess. But it seems like an upgrade sometimes. Like if you name a girl something super masculine, like Brian or something, that might be like too much. But if you name them like Kennedy, I don't know, like it just seems to fit better than if you went the other way and named a boy something like Elizabeth. And that, I mean, yeah, like it has ties to misogyny, I bet, but it is a trend that keeps happening, and I bet it happens in other cultures as well. Like this website also lets you go into French trends. So like Marie is that's the United States, but you can also check out France. I haven't looked at this data at all because I don't speak French, so this data kind of doesn't mean much to me. Oh, by the way, Marie was given to over 1 in 5 girls in 1900, which is in France, which is crazy. If I knew French, like this would be very interesting stuff to me. Like one crazy thing is that Natalie as a girl's name rose really, really fast in the 1960s in France and then fell almost instantly, which means that like almost everyone named Natalie in France is around 50 years old, right? Like around born in 1970. But because the United States and France are different cultures, there is no such peak in America's spelling of the name in America. There's no peak in 1970 whatsoever. And in fact, the most common year for a girl to be named Natalie in the US is 2005. So that would be 15 years old. So it almost feels like we're in two different universes entirely, despite the fact that it's the same name, and despite the fact that there's definitely people in America who know of French celebrities and people in France who know of American celebrities. Like you would think that there would be some correlation between the two worlds, but in many cases there isn't. And there's also like other examples of this too. I mean, I can't go through all of them right now, but basically it kind of feels like when I jump into the French database and like I click on a random year, like these things have, like I have no knowledge of them. Like Bridget for girls in France, if you're named Bridget in France, it probably has a different pronunciation. You're almost certainly around 60 years old. But then if you're named Bridget in the US, you're probably around 30. Oh, well, I guess it has a bit more spread, but there's definitely no peak around 1960 for the United States. The whole point is, like, French naming culture is very different from American naming culture, and I don't know anything about the French world, but like my hypothesis is that this trend of going boys' names going girl might be happening across multiple cultures. And I guess to tie this back to linguistics again is, the next recommended video entirely is like Grimm's Law, which is a linguistic trend or pattern. I forget exactly what it says, but I think it says that, I guess it could be described here. Yeah, shout out to Zidnaf. I love their videos. I know that they're taking a break right now, so I don't want to pressure anyone to make more videos, but I think it was like the vowels always, I forget if it's vowels or consonants. I think it's consonants. Like K's will always turn into G's, will always turn into some other type of G. I'm not sure, but it's something that has happened to many languages over the centuries. Like I guess ba da ga gua turn into ba da ga gua, and then that turns into pa ta ka kwa, and then that turns into fa tha sha shwa. I don't know how these are actually pronounced, so apologies if I'm getting it wrong. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, people are fascinated enough about linguistics to notice these patterns and try to give them names and study them. the same is sort of happening to given names, and no one is studying. I mean, I don't think anyone is really studying them or as to why, but one of the patterns I'm identifying is boy names gone girl. And the other thing I want to say is that with linguistics, okay, so first of all, with linguistics, you use spoken language way more often than you use just given names. So obviously, it's more useful to study linguistics, and obviously, there's technically more data to work with and more things you can glean about the human brain from linguistics, because it's just a bigger umbrella in general. But I think when people try to find data on linguistics and pull out these trends like this one right here, you can get information about how languages were back in time, and you can pull out documents from like the 1300s or the 1200s or from clay tablets from 5,000 years ago. But I feel like the data on how people spoke or even how they wrote for linguistics is just not as comprehensive as this data that came from US Social Security. Like the fact that we get an exact percentage year after year. Like how could you can even ask for a database that is just more rich than this, that kind of lets you see fine-tuned details. Like an example of this is if you search the name Victor in the US, you can see a very clear spike in 1918 and in 1945. Why? I hypothesize it's because the United States was the victor of World War I and II, which happened in 1918 and 1945. Also, there's like a little bit of growth in like 1942 and 43, so you could look into that. Obviously, correlation does not imply causation and all that, but what I wanted to say is you would only get to see these spikes if the data for given names was as precise as it is here. Like the fact that we can see that in 1917 we had 0.23% versus in 1918 it was 0.30%. That's such fine-tuned detail that you only get from, a database of a population instead of an approximation of some sample like linguistics works with. Not a diss to linguists, of course, because, this is all they could ever work with since there just isn't as comprehensive of a database. But I'm just like, there's just so much rich data here across multiple countries. Let's see, like Victor in France, completely different shape than the US. Like the US, it's kind of not really going up or down. It's just kind of in the middle, but there's two small spikes in the world wars. In France, it's kind of a revival name, like a name for old people back in the 1900s, and then people got tired of it because when they heard it, they thought of their grandparents, and then by the 1990s, all the grandparents died off, so people were like, oh, cool vintage name. Like, same pattern that happens with a lot of other names. But that didn't happen in the US, and who knows why. So, yeah, I know that this whole ramble has been extremely going in circles and unstructured. I kind of just wanted to hit every base so that there was at least proof online that I thought of them, or that I had planned, or I'm not sure what I'm saying. Just that I don't want to put off a project like I put off this one, because I put off this one for 2.5 years. Wait, let me try to hold on. I'm going to try something. I want to show you the script. You don't have to read it, of course, because it's way too long. But I want to show you the script, and I'm doing it off screen in case there's a Google Doc that I don't want to show you. Wait, hold on. How do I do this? This is I have two screens open right now, and the reason why that is difficult is because I can't show you my normal Google Chrome tabs, because then I'll reveal information that I don't want you to see. Okay, I have to do a phone notification thing. Apologies for how long this is. Think of this as a podcast / a Twitch live stream or something, which is why it's so unplanned and slow. Okay, here it is. Okay, are we safe? Is it safe to bring back? I think it's safe. Okay. So it's called GNOTY, which stands for Girls' Names Oldest to Youngest. And it's a script. It was a script of everything I was planning on saying in that video. Oh, it's only 24 pages, not 25. My bad. But you can see I start off by saying, hey, this is Abacaba. Yes, I'm also Cary KH. Today we're looking at American girls' names from oldest to youngest. And then I just explain stuff. And then I start by saying the oldest popular girl's name was Maud. Back then I was ordering names by their median age, not their peak year. So the ordering is slightly different. But now I don't want anyone to read this because you'd be insane to. But I just want to show you all of it so that I can at least say that it's technically publicly visible. I guess I could just like share a link to this because I'm not going to edit this in the future. But I think like there's nothing really that interesting that I want to say here. Like, I guess it's just that some of the stuff that I may have written in this script is sort of like because I was pigeonholed and tunnel visioning into this project. And I was like, wow, I think it's really fascinating that Judy Garland, the actress behind, who played Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz in that 1939 movie, she was the cause of Judy's meteoric rise in the late 30s, but 1990s media could not leave this. I don't know what I was saying there. Basically, maybe I was so tunnel visioned into this project that I thought in my head that people are going to find this interesting, when in actuality it's just like something that no one really cares about. But yeah, I'm just going to scroll through it anyway. I bet the compression is going to get really bad on this video because there's so much like text on the screen. Okay, I'll hold it here, pause. Hold it here, pause. So like, Jessica is one of the other 1987 top 3ers. When Jessica skyrocketed to second place in 1981, behind only her sister Jennifer. Like, I guess people just like, why would someone care about that, right? Like, I'm just constantly torn between thoughts of like, there's so much interesting stuff here, and like, I'm delusional, I'm tunnel visioning, and I'm not really sure what to make of that. I was thinking like, putting everything into one video is very overkill, and maybe I could turn it into like a video series. But like I said, I'm just exhausted by this whole project. Like, I've just done way too much for something where it might be like I'm mining for gold and there's just no gold to be mined in the rock at all. So I should just cut my losses and stop before I get there. Okay, so this is the end of that script. So we made it. But then I was thinking like, certain name trends might be worth showing. Like, maybe I just make a video about Monica. So like Monica Lewinsky, had the scandal with President Bill Clinton in 1998. And, I think it went too far, and like, she was cyberbullied more than she should have been. We don't need to talk about the politics of that. But, she was born in 1973. So that's actually the peak year for the name, which I think is a good sign that this data lines up with reality. Another example of the Baader thing. What was it called? Oh, shoot. I don't remember what it's called. I just remember this. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. This is another example. It's like, you learn Monica Lewinsky like was born here, and you're like, oh my god, that lines up perfectly. And then yeah, I don't want to like rub salt in the wound or anything, but I can only imagine that this really steep decline in the late 90s happened because of all the scandals breaking out. And basically what I'm saying is, putting all the data and all the stories into one video is overkill. Maybe a better idea is to just make one video about one name. So like a story called like the history of the name Monica, and like why it rose and why it fell. And maybe that would work. I feel like there just isn't enough content for a whole YouTube video. Maybe like a 60-second TikTok video. Maybe, if I want to put less effort into these things, because I said I'm tired, maybe TikTok would be better because I don't need to edit super nicely. Like, what I've also been thinking is, if you like search Vox, you'll see where this is all going. Wasn't there a series called Countries. Anyway, like a lot of Vox videos are really well produced, and the thing that makes them look really well produced is because you have all these animations of, you know, a map of this mountain range and these sort of animations that are happening all over the place. This sort of editing could help really dramatize a story and help contextualize like where things are happening, why it's relevant to the world. This kind of editing I'm too tired to do on my own, or like maybe the project just isn't worth all that effort. But like this video I made also 5 years ago, this is October 2015, is the most popular baby names per state. But just imagine if like instead of it looking like this, where it's like a very simple data visualization, instead you had like a 3D Google Earth view of the US where like the camera's kind of like zooming around the country, and you can see like the mountain ranges and like the vegetation, and then like you can see in, I don't know, let me pick a year. Certain regions are highlighted different colors, and then like when Jennifer takes over in 1970, instead of it just being like a very simple flash to orange, you kind of see this almost like smoke or fluid of this kind of army invasion. Like instead of just a simple color, it's almost like this smoke comes from the coasts and starts to spread through a state, and then you hear this like really cinematic sound of like, I don't know, just like some force taking over, like troops marching into a new land. Some way to like really dramatize it so it would be enticing to watch. I feel like if you put enough effort in, you could make it an interesting story, just like Vox does with their videos. Or, I mean, Polymatter is another channel that I think fits in the same category with Wendover Productions, RealLifeLore, and Real Engineering. And I don't want to forget any others, so maybe Kurt's Gazette as well. Just all these sort of like motion graphics visuals that like look really nice and pleasant to watch. They're not, you know, AAA movie fancy level, but it's just very pleasant to watch, and it gives you this feeling that like this is something informative that I need to know. So if I did that, or if someone else with a similar interest in baby name trends wanted to do that, it could probably work. But again, I'm probably just going to put this whole thing to rest. Like, I think what I'll do is I'll probably release a boys name version of this in the next few days. I can't decide if I want to put commentary in it or I just want to upload it, because if I just upload it with no commentary, I can do it in less than an hour, right? And then once that's done, I can sort of just forget it ever happened. Like, I can just think of it as like a fever dream, because like these aren't going to perform very well, which is like not the point, right? This is the point. The reason why I uploaded this was not because I thought it was a banger or my best work. It was just to sort of unload this baggage on my shoulders that came from, you know, that huge 24-page document. So like the point of this was not to get views, but I guess I'm just trying to think, if I upload that boys version and it doesn't have commentary, is it off my shoulders yet? I guess it's up to me to decide when do I want to just put this to rest. And like, I think the only person in this story who's relevant is me. Like, I think there's like no community waiting for this type of content, you know, like in the same way that people are sort of waiting for my next machine learning video or my next BFDI episode or my next marble race. This is sort of like so out there and niche that I think I'm the only person who's really pushing for new stuff. And like, I guess the comments are quite nice and interested. Like, Melacy D'Ancy says names and patterns involving them are a very fun thing. I wonder if like the people who are in this community are just sort of remnants of my other fan bases. Like, I'm sure a lot of these people became fans of me through BFDI and then followed me on all my other channels. And so like, this isn't what they asked for, but because it was me they wanted to watch, which is cool. I think that's awesome. Or maybe they followed this channel because of the coronavirus stuff, and then like they were just interested enough in the channel in general to follow over. Basically, like, you know, they enjoyed the content while it was like put in front of their faces, but they didn't ask for it. In the same way that like maybe Wendover Productions' fans want to see more airplane videos. There's one other thing. Like, I'm about to end this video. Yeah, about to end it, but there's one last thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, so one of the things I mentioned at the very beginning is that I feel like the only people who are interested in this stuff are me, which is a weird quirk, and people about to have a baby, like expectant parents. And I guess like at this point, I'm almost in the same age range as them because I'm 23. When I made this first video, I was 17. So like when I made this, I was definitely not in the same demographic as the people who probably cared about this the most. But the thing I wanted to say was, like, when the new data came out, and I was super fascinated with like who rose, who fell, what cultural events in the last year caused Oliver to go up even further. By the way, Oliver is one of the names that's like rising really fast for boys right now. In fact, I think it's the top name in the UK. In the UK, the top names are Oliver and Olivia, so original. Well, Olivia is also the top name in the US right now. But it's just crazy how fast it rose. Like, literally as late as 2012, it wasn't even half of where it is today. Anyway, I'm just going on a tangent. So when this data came out, and I was so passionate to talk about it, I think I made a Humany video about it. Let me search. No. See, it's like, I think it's too niche to really find. Oh, yeah, here it is. Yeah, so I made a video predicting and reacting to 2018's baby name data on June 7th, 2019. And like, this channel, again, is sort of a place where remnants of my fan base from all other sectors of the internet have sort of coalesced. So nobody watching this video was actually wanting to look for baby name analysis. They wanted me, which is cool. But it's like, you know, the comments are like sort of, I guess, showing that they came from other places. So like this person says like, I've been interested in baby names since 2014. It's official. Cary has been pregnant for 5 years. Oh, namenerds. I actually didn't know this existed. Because basically the whole thing I wanted to say was I wanted to share my fascination with these trends, but I felt like there was nowhere to go. Like I wish there was an online community of places you could go. And I guess I just found one, like literally as I'm recording this, which is really cool. But it was definitely like, I'm alone. I'm the sole person who's like opening this database. Like the workers at Social Security who have posted this database in early May are unaware that anyone is even checking their website every day, right? Like they're not aware that I'm here, I'm sitting, and like as soon as you drop that file, I'm gonna like comb through it like I am here and look for interesting things. And I was thinking like, where are other people like me? Maybe on Nameberry, but all these people are like expectant parents and I'm not like that. There's also a community here as well. You can go to comments and, oh, this person thinks that Oliver is hella ugly. But I think most people here are also expectant parents. And like, I just found out about this. So maybe like this is closer to what I'm looking for. But another thing I wanted to talk about, this is going on forever, is that it seems like when people are interested in baby names, and it's not just because they're about to have a baby, it's also because they find certain baby names beautiful and other ones ugly or kind of hard on the ears. So maybe, you know, if I type in a name that's typically ugly, like Mildred, again, something that elicits old grandma in your head because it was popular in the 1910s, you can see the ratings are bad and the comments are saying like, well, some people love it because, you know, a lot of people have the name, so it's not very nice to call it ugly. We shouldn't be calling any names ugly because people have that name. But most people say like, oh, I think it's very ugly. Sounds like an old person's name. Sounds like mildew. Truly awful name. Unattractive and dated. So like they're kind of interested in this stuff because of their own subjective opinions of the names. Whereas if you type like a name that's rising right now, let me think of something that I haven't mentioned. Mia, I don't know. Do people like Mia? If you go to comments, people, well, I guess like people are just voicing opinion again. So I was like, it sounds like Mia, which is confusing because it's like, I'm getting me a sandwich. Or I hadn't thought about that. It's very short, very cute, very simple. I guess the reason I mentioned this is because my fascination with this stuff has nothing to do with my personal feelings of how a name sounds. Like, I could care less whether Mia sounds like a beautiful girl's name or sounds as ugly as Gertrude. I just like seeing where the trends are going. What's the data behind it? Like, as far as I care, this could be like poop poop. And if the trends were going up, I would still try to figure out why and check out the line graphs. So the reason I say that is because I think a lot of these communities are looking for like prettiest looking names, which totally reasonable. Like that totally makes sense. But, or like helping choose between a bunch of favorite names, totally reasonable. I think that makes a ton of sense. But how do I say this? It's like in the same way that linguistics majors often call themselves descriptivists instead of prescriptivists, in that they're just trying to describe the trends, figure out what's happening, how are people speaking, what words are they using, what grammar are they using, instead of saying, I like this, don't like this, things should be like that, shouldn't be like that. That would be prescriptivism. I feel kind of similarly in that I don't really care how much I hate or like the name Mia. I'm just describing that it's peaking in 2015 and is now more popular than Madison. So, people are going for shorter names now, I guess. And I'm not going to prescribe whether or not I think you should name your baby Mia instead of Madison because it's prettier. And so I don't want to say like, oh, I'm not going to join this community because it's not exactly what I want. But I just would like to point out that there's a slight difference. Oh, so yeah, like here's this post about Social Security Administration's 2019 master post, which I think is awesome. Like when the master post or when the data dump came out, like I think what was the first thing I checked? Oh yeah, the first thing I checked was, has Olivia finally overtaken Emma? I could care less about how much I think those names are actually pretty or not, but I remember like Emma was like barely, slightly surpassing Olivia year after year after year, and Emma was always number one. Not that I don't like Emma, I think it's a very timeless classic, all-purpose name that works very well, but I was just like, stop being number one for 10 years in a row or something. And Olivia has like clearly pulled her weight. She deserves to be in first for at least 1 year. So when she was in 2019, like I was actually happy. Like I felt like, it's like a sports athlete who deserves to like win some award and then they finally do. It's weird. I know it's weird. And I've see, like this, it's the same thing that like so maybe this is the community that I should check out more. This person says, my Aubrey falls below Audrey prediction came up short. Aubrey went from 37 to 45 and Audrey went from 46 to 49, maybe next year. So yeah, this is like pretty cool. I guess this isn't the biggest community. Oh yeah, see, 2019 prediction thread. Will Emma and Liam still reign supreme? Well, Liam is still the number one boy's name, but like I said, Olivia overtook Emma. Liam is still rising, which is, I mean, I'm like, bro, you don't need to keep going up because you're already far ahead of, well, not far ahead. You're already ahead of number two. You have nowhere else to go. You're at the top. You can't go up any higher, but Liam is anyway. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to end this video now. It's going on for way too long. Honestly, at this point, I'm just sort of trying to figure things out in my own brain. Like, I'm not even thinking about the fact the camera's watching me right now. But I just want to talk about all this to explain why. This is all just to explain why I made this video. And sort of my stance on this channel a little bit. And kind of YouTube / making content that's interesting in general. So yeah, if you're another person who also makes data visualization videos, I know there's lots of them out there now. People who make bar graphs of like YouTube channel subscribers or something, and you want to take on this project of making videos analyzing certain names. Oh, it took me to Monica right away. I give you full permission, and like I give you permission to do so. Not that you need my permission. Like you can do it anyway. But I also want to like motivate you to do that. Like if you were on the fence, I say go for it. I'm starting to lose my voice now because I'm talking so much. Like when it starts hurting right here, that's a sign I should stop recording. Okay, bye. Thanks for watching. Bye. Oh, and if there's any other like final thoughts that I forgot to include in this recording, I'll just put it in some comment on this video, or I'll put it in the description. So, you know, if I left anything out, I'll just correct it there, even though not that many people see it. Or no one's going to make it to the end of this video anyway. Okay, thanks for watching. This is a ramble by Cary Huang on his lazy channel. I'll see you later. Bye.